All right, welcome to today's webinar. And today we're going to be going through finding the ruin. And when we find the ruin and when we get to that, you can we also subtitle this overcoming objections, but you'll get a lot less objections when you do a really good job at the beginning of your consultation. And now a couple of housekeeping points is we
I'll join it.
make these webinars very interactive, and we want to make sure that you get the most out of it. And so I'm going to ask everybody who's on here to please turn your cameras on so that we can see you, you can see us. Um, and then also, as far as the back and forth, we're going to have a chat box. You could certainly put your questions in the chat box. Um, and we also will want you to unmute where needed so that we can have that conversation there. So we got Landy, Doc Glenn, um, Charlene, William, Nicole, E-Dental, Gerge. If you guys can all go ahead and turn your cameras on. Um, If you need to get dressed first, then by all means get dressed before you turn your camera on. But thank you, Gersh. Thanks for turning your camera on. But yeah, we like to have that back and forth. So I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Dr. Gary, and he will get right into the webinar.
Great, thanks, Quentin. Welcome, everybody. Excited to go over this with you. I would say that the number one reason why someone doesn't start underneath your services when you're doing a consultation or when you're doing a report of findings, I should say, is because of not doing a great consultation. And the missing link a lot of times is that we're not really trained in school in how to do a really good consultation. It's not about just finding out information on the basics of what their problem is, but we want to find out how it's ruining them. So when I say ruin, I'm looking for what motivates the patient. I'm looking for what the patient values. And so I love the fact that you guys got your cameras on. That's fantastic. Please use the chat box if you have any questions as I'm going. For those of you who have your cameras on, thank you. We do like to make this very interactive. So if you have questions, please raise your hand, or like I said, throw a question in the chat box. Um, hey, Gurj, thank you for letting us know that, and prayers, shout out for whatever's going on that end. So we appreciate you coming on, even with that going on in your life. All right, guys. So without further ado, let's jump into this. Okay. So my story is I graduated in 1995, so I'm aging myself right now. And when I first started, I was seeing patients Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I was doing everything else. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, I was doing everything else. I was doing, and I'll give you an example of an organizing board to show you what I was doing. But I was pretty much running my whole show, just like you guys when you start to practice. You do everything, and it's a grind, right? You're grinding until you get things, in a better scene. Um, and I had a lot of different consultants. I like to say, like, they all helped me to some degree, but the old saying, wherever you go, there you are. I'd go to a seminar and I'd come back to my office on Monday and I had nothing to apply, or I didn't learn what I needed to learn because I was just, being spoken to at a conference, and I was never getting anything that could really actually apply. I had really poor report of findings numbers. I had a 35% conversion rate, which is really bad. And it made me feel bad because my purpose, just like your guys' purpose as a healthcare provider, probably is you want to serve and help as many people as you possibly can. I truly believe that, as a healthcare provider, I feel like God taps us all on the shoulder at some point in time and says, "Hey, this is the vision. This is how I want to use you to help society, so to speak." And so couple that with inconsistent marketing. My first few years in practice, I never took a vacation, and when I did, the practice suffered. And because of those really poor conversion numbers, I was always in search for what could help me with that. And for those of you who know dynamic chiropractic, I remember getting their newspaper every month, and I remember a goldenrod sheet of paper fell out of it, and on it said it had highest evers on the top. And when I started reading this, I was seeing providers from all over the country who were having highest evers in new patients, highest ever in collections and production and profitability. And I was seeing people who had like 80, 90% conversion rates. And I was like, wow, um, I need to look into this. And long story short, I ended up taking some courses through the Business Academy. And when I came home from that, my conversion rate went from 35% to 80%, 75%, 80%, like overnight. And it completely changed my office to where I went from, 100 visits a week to 600 visits a week in a matter of a couple of years. And I attribute that to the Business Academy, and that's the reason why I ended up joining the Business Academy team years later. And I haven't had another consultant in my practice space since 2003 or four when I joined them, just because once I learned how to convert, I started to scale. I needed to learn how to be an executive, and they had all these other courses that taught me how to be an executive. They taught me how to be a business. They taught me like how to get new patients. But the greatest thing is they actually helped train my staff, so it unburdened me, so I could focus on being a CEO and actually grow my business and help more people. So that's a little bit about me. Um, I had some major growth. This isn't to impress you. This is just to impress upon you that in one of my offices, I just completely started to scale very, very quickly when I put all the systems in. And the same, I've seen this happen over and over again with other clients that they just massively scale once they put standard operating procedures in and they scale. So my intention today with you guys, we're going to be talking about sales, but I just wanted to let you know that when you're looking at being in a business, there's many different systems that you have to have standard operating procedures in. Whether it's your dream, like for instance, you're three people in one, whether you realize it or not. If you're the business owner on here, you're a founder and you're a dreamer, you're a manager and you're a technician all rolled into one. And what I see, what quite often happens is once you start grinding, you spend all your time being a technician, treating patients, and managing this whole thing. That you're not wearing that founder dreamer hat as much. You guys still have lots of opportunities around you all the time. It's just you may not see them because you're in the trenches. And our intention always is how do we help business owners become capable CEOs so that you can massively transform your community and health, but also massively transform you as someone in the family, someone you being able to flourish and prosper so that you can send your schools to the schools that you want to go to, live in the zip code you want to live in, give to the charities that you want to give to your church what you want to give to help your community even more. All of these need a system. Your dream, getting new patients, how do you market needs a system. Your lead management needs a system. What kind of CRM are you using? How are you following up? Because a lot of your sales guys are in your follow up. And then your sales system, like how do you do a proper consultation, which we're going to focus on today? How do you do a really effective report of findings? And how do you actually do a good financial presentation where people sign on the dotted line, right? And so I want to start with this org board because even though we're going to be spending all of our time talking about your division two, which is your enrollment, this is just one piece of the pie, guys. This is one piece of the pie that we've got to really, firm up so that you can onboard more patients. And real quickly, I want to use this as an example. I told you earlier that I spent a lot of my first 10 years in every single area of my office. And so what I mean by that is if I go over this org board in Division 7, this is where we live as owners. You manage and establish your practice. You have your executive council. You do your financial planning. In Division 1, this is your front desk, your HR. In Division 2, this is where the sales is in your office. This is where you're doing your case management, your consults, exams, report of findings. Division 3 is your like payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory. Division 4, this like when you're seeing a patient face to face treating them, that's in Division 4. So whatever services that you do, whether you're a medical doctor on here, a dentist, a chiropractor, all of your services are in here. if you're functional medicine, if you are regen medicine, if you're chiro, if you do rehab as well, all the treatment happens in Division 4. Division 5 is your quality control. This is like how you correct your staff. It's your continuing education. It's how you handle upset staff, upset patients, right? And then Division 6 is your marketing. How are you getting new patients into your office? And so when you look at these 7 divisions, just take a mental note. How many divisions are you currently in? And that's what I mean by a lot of us have this glass ceiling that we don't even see. But what happens is, like in my first 10 years, I'd be treating patients, like I was saying, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I'd be doing all these other divisions, throughout the week. Like, I'd go and do marketing events on Saturday or in the evenings. I'd be doing dinner talks or lunch and learns. If there was a problem in with a staff member, I'd be jumping into Division 5. If I had to hire, I'd be jumping in Division 1. And so I was in every single area for many, many years. And in essence, I wasn't growing. After 10 years of practice, I was seeing 100 visits a week. And by the way, that's not bad. It's just, what's your purpose? What's your goal? What's your dream? How many people do you want to serve? Do you want a personality-based business, or do you want a staff-driven practice? That's kind of up to you guys to decide. Like I said earlier, you're 3 people in one. You're the founder, the dreamer, you're the executive, and I'm sorry, you're the manager, and you're the technician. So at the end of the day, you get to choose the game that you're going to play. You might love treating patients, and you might love hanging out in Division 4, and that's fine. But then I would recommend that you get your management team built up and trained so you can do more of Division 4. If you want to have multiple practices, well, guess what? You're going to have to get out of these different areas to be able to open up that second practice. And we do that very successfully on a day-to-day basis. So just make a mental note, or you can even put in the chat box right now, how many divisions are you in? Landy, Charlene, just throw that in. Hey, Rana, good to see you. Gurge, William, Nicole, if you can use your chat box, just give me an idea of how many divisions are you currently in. Now, what we're going to focus on the rest of this time is the sales division. And to the title of this talk, how do you find the ruin? I want to define that a little bit more. And before I do, I always like to ask the question, how many would you like to have an 80% conversion rate? I don't know about you guys. I want to get that conversion as high as I possibly can. Thank you, Landy. I want to get that conversion as high as I possibly can so I can serve and help more people, right? Now, if you're in, 3 or 4, divisions or more, I can tell you that you don't. We don't even have to have a conversation, but I already know that you're running into stops. You're running into barriers, and the thing is, if you're anything like me, in that you're in this to help as many people as you possibly can, that comes with a lot of frustration because you're always putting fires out. I always like to say that my first 10 years of practice, I was a professional firefighter. I was putting fires out all over my organization, and I'm thinking you guys probably can relate to that. And so the great thing about that is I've been there, done that. I know how to actually get through it. And so the Business Academy knows how to get through it. And I liken it to a field full of landmines. And our intention is to get from this starting point, and we're going to walk across this field together. And in the field, there's landmines. And it's like the old saying, "Step where I step, walk where I walk, and you'll just get through it." I don't know if you guys know, but that actually comes from the Vietnam when a soldier there'd be a soldier who would be in charge of getting through a field without hitting a landmine. And so we know where the break points are. We know where the next problems you're going to have based on where you're at in your organization. And so the intention here is to go over some of these landmines that you're getting in your conversion process. And so with having said that, I want to define something real quickly with you, and it's called hard sell. Because one of the biggest barriers that providers have just out the gates is that you may have a button on the word sell, you know, and you may not feel great about even presenting care plans because, maybe you have a price objection yourself. And so if we don't handle us first in our purpose and in our intention, we we ourselves can be the problem point, right? So if I look at this definition, hard sell means insistence that people buy. It means caring about the person and not being reasonable about stops or barriers but caring enough to get them through the stops or barriers to get the services that's going to rehabilitate that patient in front of you. Now, there's a few key definitions in here. Number one is we don't want to be reasonable. Okay. Um, what that would look like is if someone gives you an objection on money, and if you agree with them on that, if up in your mind you agree with that objection, you're not going to push through to get that patient closed on care. Um, I'll define that a little bit more here in the next slide. But another thing that's really important on this hard sell is that you can see in this definition, it mentions caring twice. For those of you who have case managers or you have someone hired to do your consultations, it's really important that you find someone who has some empathy for people. That's the number one quality I'm looking for in a case manager is do they want to serve and help people? Do they have empathy for people? And are they willing to help bring them through, have them go through those stops or barriers to get on the other side of that so that patient is signing up for care? Okay. So if we look at reasonable, by definition, it means faulty explanation. So an example is when an executive starts to explain the reasons for low statistics instead of getting high statistics, they're being reasonable. Okay. Um, Another example on that would be is if someone needs to come into your office 3 or 4 times a week, and you're thinking to yourself, well, that's a lot of time. I wouldn't do that myself. Guess what objection you're going to get? You're going to get more time objections. If you have money considerations yourself, you're going to you're going to you're going to see more of those objections hit you until you get right with yourself and can and look in that mirror and not have time and money considerations. You're going to get a lot of those objections, and until you know how to handle those objections, those stops and barriers are going to continue to press up against you. And so this is just something that we have to confront. I think every provider at some point in time has to confront that. Okay. Now, soft sell is another thing I want to define here. It just means vaguely monitoring about your product. So, an example would be if someone said chiropractic could possibly help you with your pain. Do you guys see the language in there where that's kind of a stop? The word possibly is just really weak. I don't know about you guys, but I know if a patient actually follow through with my treatment protocols and my recommendations, they're going to get results. Okay. Or the second phrase, it might be helpful if you follow your treatment plan. Again, I know if a patient follows their treatment plan, they're going to get results. It's not might, they're going to get results. Or that last statement, if your front desk was saying, "Hey, come schedule an adjustment every once in a while, it helps." Um, that's weak language. It's similar to if you've ever gone over X-rays with the patient and you said, hey, you kind of have a misalignment issue and you're starting to see some arthritis and that disc is starting to thin a little bit, and you're using minimizing language. When you're using minimizing language, you're actually painting a minimizing picture in the patient's mind. And so we've got to have much stronger language. So an example of that would be, hey, your disc is dying here. You got bone spurs developing. You have arthritis. It's not a kind of sort of thing. It's kind of like if you ever went to your OB and you did a pregnancy test, the doctor's never going to say, well, you're kind of pregnant. You either are or you're not, right? And so we have to tighten up our language, and I hope that makes sense to you guys. Now, crush sell is what gives this whole sales thing a bad, gives a bad rap to people who actually sell services. This is like the used car salesman, that really kind of pushes hard on you to buy something and you really don't want it, and they're trying to force you into it. We don't do that. So crush sell just means overdoing the hard sell technique, and you wind up with a crush sell and unhappy customers. You go the other extreme with soft sell, and you'll wind up with no new patients. So it's a happy medium, and we go over in training on how to handle that. So we're going to get into this ruin here in just a second, but here are the top reasons to, if you really want to decrease your objections that you get, because that's what we're really trying to look at is how do we decrease the resistance to buying? And the, the first step here is just what's your beingness? And what I mean by that is, um, your beingness, like for instance, some of you, we all have a different type of beingness. So, like, are you a great mother or father or a really bad one? We can define that, you know, to yourself. But if you look at being a healthcare provider, you can be just on top of it, really, really good, or you could not be, you could be poor. And so I like to give the example of, I'm going to use chiropractic as an example because I think we have more chiropractors on here. If I took a chiropractor that sees 100 visits a week, and then I take another office that's doing 400 visits a week, and I have these two offices. If I take the provider seeing 100 visits a week and I put them into the 400, what's going to happen to those numbers? Is that 100 visits a week chiropractor going to be able to maintain that 400 visits a week? Probably not. Okay. Vice versa, if I take the provider seeing 400 and I put them in the 100, what are they going to do to those numbers? They're probably going to go up. Would you guys agree with that? So it's not that one is better than the other. I can tell you that it's more that the person who sees 400 visits a week is it has more training and more knowledge on how to do that. Would you guys agree with that? So a lot of the times you increase your beingness by training. Because the thing is let's just put it out there. If you guys knew how to do that, you've already created it. If you haven't done that, you either don't want it or you haven't figured out how to do it yet. And so that comes with training. The second thing that would decrease your number of objections is just having faith, confidence, and belief in your product, services, and ideas. Believing 100% in your product and service. And I know that sounds crazy because you guys might be on here going, well, that I believe in what I do, but I've spoken with countless providers over the years that will tell me I wouldn't even pay for the services I'm selling. Okay, so if you're living in that world, that's something that we have to confront. Like, if you're not willing to actually do what you're recommending, then that's a stop. Okay, but when you have so much faith, confidence, and beliefs in your product, services, and ideas, and it's oozing out of you, those objections melt away. People feel your confidence and certainty. And this is something I want you to write down. The most confident and certain person in the room wins. Okay. Now, how we started this off, gang, is we talked about systems, standard operating procedures. So if you look at number 3, following a consultation, examine, and report of findings, following those standard operating procedures, following those scripts. When you have a system of doing it, it's reproducible. You can train someone else to do it in the future as you expand and grow. But when you have a system, you know exactly where the out points are if you ever have a problem. You know how to self-correct. And so we want to make sure that you're following a system. And lastly, mastering the awareness scale, which I'm going to go over here shortly. The awareness scale is a tool that you use that you mentally know that patient has to get to a high level of awareness to say yes to your recommendations. And I'll go over that here in just a second. So here's another more reasons on why you get a no when you're trying to close someone on care. One is that you're misinformed on what it takes to actually close a patient. 2 is you might look at pressure as perceived as a bad thing. When you have a lot of faith and confidence in what you're doing, you're not pressuring the patient. Okay, we're not pressuring the patient whatsoever. The patient might feel pressured, but it's coming from them internally. Actually, it can be a good thing that you're just sitting down with them and you're getting them to confront what they haven't been confronting. If they've been confronting it, they wouldn't have the problem that they're having. Okay. The unwillingness to deal with the emotional discomfort can prevent someone from starting on care. We already touched on this, a lack of belief, an incorrect estimation of effort. We talked about being reasonable. Those are all things that can put stops on your conversion rate. And lastly, no financial plan in place that can prevent the close. And what I mean by that is do you have a financial plan personally? Like, what are your targets and why? I can tell you this. Have you guys ever seen like when someone wins the lottery, they're usually broke within 3 or 4 years? When you give something to someone and they haven't actually, earned it, typically they don't know how to deal with that income. And so you need to know how you're going to spend the money and how you're going to allocate money before you're going to make it. And so having a financial plan personally can really help with this whole process. All right. Now, as I promised, we're going to go over this awareness scale. And I want to go over some examples with this because this was a game changer for me. When I learned a report of findings process with the Business Academy and I learned this awareness scale, that is when my conversion skyrocketed. So I want you to understand that this awareness is basically what someone perceives, and you've seen this before. Patients will come into your office with different levels of awareness. So some people can come in and their numbness, like you guys all know what medications do to people, right? They numb you. So if you have patients who are on a lot of medications and they're taking, it's numbing them. Okay. It numbs them. I used to do a lot of events and I'd have people come in all the time saying, I'd say, hey, what brought you in? And they'd be like, well, that person who's at the event told me to come in. See, it's like numb. Or I used to hear my wife or my husband told me to come in. It's a pretty low awareness level. Okay. And then you've had patients who come in and they come in and they're suffering and they're in despair. Like, hey, I've got this, low back pain. It's excruciating and so they're in suffering. Now, what our goal is we have to get the patient up this awareness scale. What we have found is that when we get a patient to a demand for improvement, you're going to have a very high conversion rate. But if we don't bring someone up this awareness scale, and there's a knack to doing that we train on, but if you don't actually bring someone up, if they hang out down here, they're not going to start on care. We've got to, in essence, bring them on up. Now, the title of this talk was, finding the ruin. So the ruin, by definition, actually, I'm going to give you some definitions here, guys, so that you can follow along with me. Let's start with awareness first. Awareness is just what someone perceives what's there, right? The report of findings process is designed to increase someone's awareness. And we do that by educating the patient on what their condition is, right? And they develop a better understanding. And with a greater understanding, the patient will choose to do something about their unwanted condition. Okay, it's important to understand that. Now, if I break down these different levels of awareness, the ruin is a problem. It's a problem that is real to the person. Um, the patient's unwanted condition. It's the emotional component behind the patient's discomfort and pain. It's the emotional component. So when we look at the effect, the patient realizes how this ruin here is affecting their life. And then there's this fear of worsening. This is like oh my God, they're thinking like time is my enemy, and which it is, right? If you think about it, time is all of our enemy. There's no one getting off this planet alive, right? Our bodies are going to break down. And so really, when you think about it, our job is to help a patient to where their body functions really, really well and that they have as high a quality and quantity of life as possible. Need of change is when the patient, they realize that they need to do something about it. Like they finally get to the point where like, I'm ready to do something about this. And when you get them to a demand for improvement, they are like very like, I'm going to fix this. When you get someone like, I'm going to fix this, that's when you have high conversion rates. And that's when they reach for help, and they have hope that they're going to get better. Okay. So now if I go back to this awareness scale, the ruin is what you find this during the consultation. And I'm going to give you an acronym to write down. This is not in the slides. I'm just going to give it to you. I'm going to exchange an abundance with you. I'm going to give you more than what you thought. And it's called SPIN, SPIN. It's called spin selling. So these are just different questions. This is an acronym. S stands for situation, P stands for problem, I stands for implication, and stands for need payoff. And to really get right after it here, for you to find someone's ruin, you have to ask implication and need payoff questions as well as situation and problem-based questions. So if someone says they have low back pain, that would be like that's a problem. It's a situation problem. But for me to find out what to get implication is the negative behind having that pain. So my questions are going to be like, how does this affect you at home, work, daily activities? Let's say the patient said, um, at home, it affects them that they get home from work and they can't play with their kids. Okay. Now, is that the ruin? Maybe, maybe not. But if I follow that question up with, by the way, I'm telling you guys are probably, you need to ask one or two additional questions compared to what you're currently doing to find the ruin. And that might sound like this, like, how does that make you feel that when you get home, you're unable to play with your kids? Now, I'm looking for an emotional response. If the patient goes, well, I don't feel like I'm a good father. Why is that? Well, because I'm not spending time with my kids like I want to, and I'm missing out on them. And then you know, then you might ask a question, well, wow, how long has that been going on? 2 years. So how do you feel like this will be if you don't do anything about this? How will this be 2 years from now? You see, they're negative, they're implication questions. Now, on the flip side, I want to ask need payoff questions like, you know, when we find out the problem and we fix this, how would that make you feel? I'd feel so much better. Like I'd feel like I'm a father again. I'd feel like I'm playing with my kids. I'm spending more time with them. It'd be a game changer for me. Okay. And so it's asking better questions. The quality of your questions will always give you the quality answers that you get. And so I highly, highly recommend that in your consultations, you just don't spend time on like OPQRST, like what was the onset, what makes it feel better or worse, what's the quality of the pain, does it radiate or not, what's the timing of it, blah, blah, blah. I want to get that in the paperwork. I want to spend the consultation time asking more of those spin questions. How's it, how's it, what's the implication and what's the need payoff? Now, the reason why that is such a huge thing, guys, is the person who actually developed this method in his book. Um, he was doing studies across every single business vertical you can think of. And what he found was that the people who used more implication and need payoff questions had a much higher conversion rate. And what this gentleman found was that the higher your ticket item is, you need to ask more implication and need payoff questions. So if you're doing 5 and 10, 15, or $20,000 care plans, you've got to ask more of those types of questions. And when you do that, you're going to have a higher conversion rate. Because at the end of the day, when you're doing a 5 or $10,000 care plan, a patient isn't just buying the care plan, they're buying you. And those types of questions actually have built-in empathy with them. So do you remember when I was going over the hard sell definition and I mentioned that has caring in there twice? Like when you start asking implication and need to pay off questions, I can guarantee you most healthcare providers are not asking those types of questions. So immediately the trust factor goes up with you. Okay. So again, our goal is to get the patient to a demand for improvement, and that's where we're going to have a much higher conversion rate. Okay. Now I want to go over some tips on handling objections. So again, if you have questions, raise your hand or throw it in the chat box. Now, there's only 5 categories of objections that you're ever going to get. And you guys already know probably half of them, right? It's the money, it's finances, income, money. 2, it's time. 3 is an objection on your product or your service. 4 is a stall. I need to go talk to my spouse. It can be a stall. Money can be a stall, right? How many of you have ever given a money objection, and it wasn't money, but you want to get out of the conversation. You don't want to get so you throw money out as being a problem when it really isn't about the money. It's probably because there's a question that hasn't been answered that you may have. There's information that you need. Um, so the fifth category of objections that we get is the objection they don't tell us. And again, that's because they don't trust us yet. So have you ever had that patient who you do the consultation, you're doing the report of findings, everything seems like it's going smooth, it's going great, and then you get to the financial presentation and they fold. They just like, then you don't close them. Here you thought everything was going great, they're on board, they're ready to go, and all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. A lot of times that happens because there's information that they haven't gotten, but they don't, or there's something going on with them that they don't trust you enough to have those conversations. Like maybe they're going through a bankruptcy, maybe they're going through divorce, maybe they were injured by a similar type of practitioner and they just don't want to talk to you about it. So just know that there's um, five major categories of objections. That's what they are, and so we got to learn how to get past those. Right now, the keys to handling objections and closing is number one is you've got to really define your purpose. What is your motivation and what's your conviction? Why do you do what you do? All right. Really important. The second handling here is we got to do a proper consultation because if you do a proper consultation, it'll reduce your objections by 50%. Again, the quality of your questions will give you the quality of the answers you get. I see this over and over again. The number one reason why a patient does not convert is a poor consultation. So if you're sitting at 30, 40% conversion rates, I can tell you that's the first place. If I would actually tell you, record your report of findings, record your consultation, listen to them, and really identify, am I finding the patient's ruin? Am I seeing how it affects their life? Am I finding out what they value? You see, money money is very reactional. As far most people have a reaction towards money. They have um, it's a sticking point for a lot of people. And when you ask better questions and you find out what a patient values, money considerations go away when you find out what a patient values. So we got to get really good at finding out, like, what their ruin is, how it affects them, all that fun stuff. Okay. Now, we already touched on this. Patients must be at a demand for improvement to have a high closing percentage. So your report of findings process has to be designed to increase that patient's awareness and get them up to a demand for improvement. When that happens, it's magical. Your conversion rates will go through the roof. Okay. Now, a couple of tips when you're presenting money. Anytime you guys have heard this before, but when you actually go over the care plan, you go over what that investment looks like, and it is an investment. I would use investment in your language. Your investment is 5,000, whatever. But once you ask for the close, you stop talking. You've all heard the first person who talks what loses, right? And so once you present it, you stop talking. Whatever they say next, you want to agree with them. More communication comes from agreement. If you have any form of disagreement, it decreases your communication. We want a wide open communication. So if a patient said, "Wow, that's really expensive," I would say, I would respond with, "It is expensive. What would you like to do?" Now, the reason I put it back on them, when someone says that's expensive, is it an objection or are they complaining? Do we know yet? We really don't know yet. How many of you, okay, here's a good example. If you've ever gone and purchased a high ticket item, a car or something like that, they present like here's the cost of the car, it's 60 grand. You might go, wow, that's really expensive. And um, but how many of you still drove off the lot with it? Right? Happens all the time. So it was just merely a complaint. So I can guarantee you, if you add this to your financial presentation, number one, you present the care plan, you present what the investment is. If they say it's expensive, just say, it is expensive. What would you like to do? I treat it like a complaint. You'd be amazed at how many people just go, well, do you take payments, or uh, can I finance this? Or they might say, you know, do you take American Express? Yeah, we do. So, is that what you'd like to do? Yes. Sign here and here. The financial is done. You literally have much faster financial cycles when you actually treat objections like complaints. Now, if they say the same objection more than one time, then you're dealing with an objection and not just a complaint. Okay. And the last tip here is I want you to focus in on whatever objection they give you. It's the reason why the patient should actually do the care. Okay. So as an example, if the patient said, that's expensive, or wasn't expecting that, I would respond with, it is expensive. What would you like to do? Well, that's just way, I can't, there's no way I can do that. I get you. So, and then what I do is I remind them of what they told me during the report of findings. I would say something like, you told me that you wanted to handle this problem. You also told me that your condition would worsen if you didn't do anything about it. So can you see, if you don't do anything about this now, is your condition going to get worse as time goes on? And they'll agree if you do the proper report of findings. Then that's the very reason why you should do this, because if you don't do anything about it, it's actually be more expensive in the future. So their objection literally becomes the reason why they should do it. Okay. So there's ways to go about doing that helps handle those objections. Now, some take homes is we want to learn a proven sales system. One, two, again, we've got to believe in our services, right? Three, we want to be insistent that patients, buy and get the services that are going to help them. And we know that number four is we've got to get the patient higher up in that awareness, awareing their situation to where they're at a demand for improvement. And you will have massive, conversion rate increase, which is a game changer. I'm going to skip over this slide. So I'm going to open up for questions in a little bit, but I want you to hear from Dr. Dahmer. I've been a client with the Business Academy for a while. I just want you to hear from him real quickly, because I think he's probably going to hit the nail on the head for what some of you are going through.
We started off seeing 30 people a week. We're seeing 1,000 people a week now. We're serving more of our community. Dr. Brian Dahmer, owner of Family Chiropractic Center for Wellness. I was that chiropractor that worked 5 years and never took a vacation. I can't imagine stepping away from my practice for more than a week. TBA has not only allowed me to become phase 2, I'm not in my practice anymore. I could take a vacation for 2 months now if I wanted to. And I've never had that kind of freedom. I have people coming up saying, oh, I go to your office, and I've never met them. It's nice to hear they got a great experience in my office, got a great adjustment, they're referring people, and I never stepped foot in that office. Management, having good leaders, having people that could run the show when I'm not there. We put the systems in place, the org board in place. It gives you just a clear vision on where you want to go and how to expand in the future. I joined 7th Division, which is a group of incredible individuals doing things above and beyond at a high level. I love masterminding with these people. I always walk away with best ideas and a nugget that I go home and immediately implement. I chose TBA just because I needed that structure. With 4 offices, if you don't have systems that are repeatable and staff aren't accountable and managed properly, it all comes crashing down. You can't have a personality-driven practice. You have to have something people can plug into, buy into, and grow. It's just the vision that you put out that you want to create, and you just keep expanding it and making it bigger. I can only impact so many people with my own 2 hands, but as you teach and as you inspire your team, man, it's amazing what you can do. I'm excited to be a part of the group, and I can't wait for more to come.
I love playing that video just because he's a perfect example. He went from, a handful of treatments a week to where now he has 6 offices seeing over 2,000 patient visits a week. And that was built on systems. That was him learning how to be a CEO, and how to be a business rather than just focusing on being a one-man band in an office. And again, everyone has different dreams, Each and every one of you on here have strengths, and you have different weaknesses, and you may have different aspirations, but that's why we actually do what's called a practice analysis to find out what that is, and I'll explain that here in just a little bit. But I'd love to show you a shortcut here. And so we do have a really amazing event coming up in April, and we've put together an immersion experience. It's a 3 days where you jump in, start your implementation, and I want to show you how that works basically. So it's ElevateCon. It's April 23rd, 4th, and 5th in Clearwater, Florida. So easy flight into Tampa, 20-minute drive, and what we're going to be focusing on is building systems, right? Build systems, build freedom. We want to help you build your 2026. So it's spending 3 transformational days with elite operators. These are proven leaders and expansion-minded owners preparing to make 2026 their breakthrough year. It's a 3-day intensive training for you and your team. The location is just south of Clearwater in Largo, and we're going to be going over some fun stuff. So on Thursday, we have a case management intensive. The stuff that I just went over right now are things that we're going to go into in much greater detail for that full day. For those of you who have associate doctors, bring them. We have an associate doctor mastery day. We have an executive leadership boot camp going on that day. And for those of you who are medically integrated, bring your medical provider. And we have a boot camp for the medical provider. Okay. And the whole purpose is to help with expansion and growth. On Friday, we have high-level speakers. We are going to be going how to scale, learn the exact decisions and systems that pivots and gets your office going in the right direction. And we have an immediate implementation strategy that we go over as well. And so it's a 3-day immersion. Saturday, we get into more advanced practice training where elite speakers and implementation specialists deliver hands-on frameworks for real growth. And we have a team alignment and performance where we work on improving communication, coordination, and culture to elevate your entire organization. So it's a massive 3-day event. And just to go by the numbers here, what we're offering right now is, for being on this call, is the ElevateCon convention ticket is $850. Your full growth practice analysis. Now, what this is a phone call with Quentin where you go over, here's where I'm currently at, here's my ideal scene. We figure out what's the gap here, and that's your blueprint to expansion. That's 1,500. We do a building your dream team manual. We do a lost income analysis. We do new patient scheduling analysis, mystery call, and you guys also get a manual on closing with confidence. That's $4,350 total for all of those things, and you get that for $997 today. So basically, that's your tickets to ElevateCon. That's your practice analysis and everything I just mentioned. Okay, so it's a fantastic deal. All you got to do is scan that QR code, and also we can answer any questions that you may have on what I've gone over today. But also this opportunity that you have for coming to ElevateCon next month. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Landy, do you have any questions for me?